Although Kathleen Munn has been recognized as a pioneer of abstraction in Canada, and Amice Calverley has been acknowledged as having invented a method of drawing to accurately render scenes at Egyptian archaeological sites, their drawings have yet to be fully appreciated. In this presentation, I argue that the drawings of Munn and Calverley offer primary evidence of their experiments to see, to discover, and to become modern. As Kathleen Munn emphasized in her notebook, modernity has to do with methods and attitudes. Kathleen Munn and Amice Calverley might seem to be an unlikely pairing of Canadian women artists. Munn received extensive artistic training, whereas Calverley was mostly self-taught. Munn exhibited her drawings during her lifetime, and her work now lives on within museum collections, while Calverley remains virtually unknown as a mere footnote within archaeological texts. In spite of these differences, there are notable points of connection. Both women were fiercely independent and lived as modern women, unburdened by the societal expectations of their gender. But the key point of connection is that drawing was central to their work, allowing them to discover, record, and interpret the world. And as we shall see, both Munn and Calverley embraced modernity in harnessing drawing strategies that were deliberate, meticulous, and time-consuming. Drawings capture the physical gestures of the artist in inscribing marks on a planar surface that record mimetic representations of the world or create abstractions born in the imagination. For much of history, drawing has long been viewed as an intermediate or secondary artistic medium, and for that reason has remained largely absent from the critical discourse of art history. However, recent scholarly attention has recast drawing from its marginalized position in the hierarchy of art, such that drawing is now perceived as performance, as a tool, as a place of production, as a discursive exploration, a site of conception, and as a cognitive process. This has resulted in a broader consideration of what drawing encompasses, what it represents, and what it can accomplish. The drawings of Munn and Calverley deserve further study, since the marks made in drawings serve as primary evidence of the artist's body and mind at work. In their work, both women had to resolve important questions about representation. Philosopher Paul Valéry noted, "There's a tremendous difference between seeing a thing without a pencil in your hand and seeing it while drawing it. As I've argued elsewhere, there is power and potential in drawing that extends its boundaries beyond art practice, and I use drawing as a research tool, replicating selected drawings or portions of drawings by Munn and Calverley. This type of drawing is a form of mediation that enhances my understanding of their work, allowing me to better appreciate the weight, speed, and nuances of the artist's gestures, as well as consider the complex compositional strategies employed." Munn's notebooks are filled with her annotations on the work of modern artists like Degas, Cézanne, Matisse, and Picasso, in addition to annotations about compositional strategies and what it means to be modern. It is in her untitled sketches that we can see her deliberate and conscious strategies to embrace abstraction in her work. Her drawing of a man dozing in a chair in the top left corner is representative of her first attempts to draw from life. In the drawing of a seated woman, she abstracts the human form. The lines are spare and economical, much like the drawings by Matisse. Munn's drawings of female nudes illustrate her attempts to further abstract the figure with the help of geometry. And in the drawing in the upper right corner, she organizes the abstracted forms in accordance with compositional theory. These are only a few of the hundreds of sketches in the AGO archives that show Munn's deliberate efforts to become modern. With these drawings, we see the transformation from a beginner drawing mimetically from life into a mature artist fully in control of her pencil and utilizing complex rules of geometry to create dynamic compositions. As Georgiana Olronic has noted, Munn was committed to J. Hambage's theory of dynamic symmetry in developing her compositions. It was while studying at the Art Student League in New York that Munn was first exposed to this theory of composition in her classes with George Bellows. Bellows was known for his depictions of boxers, and like her teacher, Munn made several studies of boxers, trying out various placements and orientations before producing a fully rendered drawing in charcoal. In replicating her drawings, I was able to trace her efforts to harness Hambage's compositional theory. In the early 1920s, artist J. Hambage published several books on the theory of dynamic symmetry, in which he attributed the development of pleasing compositional structures to the Greeks and Egyptians. Hambage noted that the Greeks had recognized and perfected the underlying systems of geometry found within Egyptian art and architecture. Hambage's system was based around the patterns found in nature, including the logarithmic spiral. He translated this into a theory of composition involving root rectangles, and Munn studied this system, making extensive notes in her notebooks. Munn's adoption of this complex compositional theory with its origins to the Egyptians is a fascinating and strange point of connection between Munn and Calverley. The English-born Amice Calverley did not set out to become an artist. Although she took some lessons at the Slade School of Art, her passion was music, and she initially studied at the Conservatory of Music in Toronto. Nonetheless, her innate talent for drawing led to a recommendation to pursue archaeological drawing. Calverley was initially employed as a draftsperson for the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, and because of her superior skill, was hired in 1927 by the Egypt Exploration Society to produce drawings of the Temple of King Sethos at Abydos, an archaeological site that was considered one of the most elegant and well-preserved of the pharaonic temples. The drawings made by Amice Calverley are not artworks in a traditional sense, and yet I would argue that Calverley is an artist that worked in a modern way, adapting available technology and working in a collaborative manner to produce drawings of the temple. Calverley's work in Egypt to transcribe the Egyptian reliefs was difficult and painstaking. Aside from harsh environmental conditions, she also had to cope with low levels of light, constricted spaces, and surfaces that were often curved or damaged. To achieve a high level of accuracy, Calverley developed a technique that used a combination of photographs, tracings, rubbings, and finishing on site to render precise drawings of the paintings and reliefs. The Egyptian Exploration Society published 4 oversized folio volumes featuring the drawings and annotations about the Temple of Abydos. Although Calverley's work was executed with the support of an assistant, as well as various mechanical devices, what is important to my argument is that Calverley's work allowed her to see more than others involved in the project. In the final volume of the series, Calverley is given notable credit for her numerous astute observations about the art and architecture of the temple. The text includes observations by Calverley about the way the figures were abstracted and dressed. She noted that the modeling of each plane is complete in itself. For example, the broad relief of the figures shows a sharper curve where the bone structure is near the surface, as in head, nose, shoulder, and shin, whereas the softer texture of the flesh is graduated almost to the background, each anatomical detail indicated with meticulous care within the limits of prescribed convention. In the course of her work, she had carefully observed the conventions of the abstraction employed by unknown Egyptian artists of the past. In the course of her work at the Temple of Seti, she was continually looking and learning, and thus able to see what had gone unnoticed by others. Drawing facilitated discovery. Kathleen Munn sought out abstraction in her work, while Amice Calverley transcribed the abstractions of form achieved by the Egyptians into another format. For both women, drawing was fundamental to their life's work, setting them on the path to discovery. As Charles Blanc observed, drawing is not a simple imitation, a copy corresponding mathematically to the original, an art reproduction. Drawing is a work of the mind. In closing, I suggest that drawing can also be harnessed as a research tool. For example, in order to better understand the application of the theory of dynamic symmetry in Kathleen Munn's painting Two Figures in a Landscape, I used drawing to replicate the forms found in the painting and in the underdrawing. In doing so, I noticed the significance of the curve of the breast, which initiates the logarithmic spiral found in nature that underpins Hambage's compositional theory. The breast curve thus becomes a focal point in contrasting a single curve in a composition dominated by straight lines. I have more work to do to understand the rigor with which Munn applied the rules of dynamic symmetry, since the rectangles and perpendiculars do not line up perfectly according to the rules. Suffice to say that there is more to be discovered.